Okay, we're going to start with subtracting fractions today. So our first step on subtracting fractions is always going to be to get a common denominator. So let's start with 3/4 minus 1/10. If we want to subtract 3/4 minus 1/10, our common denominator, our least common denominator, or our lowest common denominator would be 20. Now, if you looked at 4 and 10 and you thought that you might use 40, that would be okay. You would still get the correct answer. You would just likely have to reduce it at the end. So we're going to use 20 since that's the lowest common denominator. So I put my fractions out here with a denominator of 20. Then I ask myself, what would I have to multiply 4 by to get 20? I would have to multiply it by 5. Whatever you do to the bottom of the fraction, you've got to do the same thing to the top. So I'll multiply the top by 5 as well and get 15 over 20. Down here for 1/10, I would have to multiply 10 by 2 to get 20, and whatever I do to the bottom of the fraction, I've got to do it to the top as well. So 1/10 would become 2/20. Now, when we subtract, just like we add, we only subtract the numerators of the fractions. The denominator stays the same. So 15 minus 2 is 13 over 20, and that answer will not reduce, so that is our final answer on that problem. Okay, let's try another one. 4/6 minus 1/9. Okay, for these two fractions, it looks like our common denominator, our least common denominator, would be 18. Okay, so I'm going to write my fractions out here with a denominator of 18. Again, when you're looking for a denominator, you're looking for the lowest number that both 6 and 9 will go into evenly. And that, in this case, would be 18. So 6 will go into 18 3 times. That means we would have to multiply that by 3 to get 18. Whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. So that's going to give you 12/18. On the bottom here, 1/9, we would have to multiply the 9 by 2 to get 18. So we'll also have to multiply the 1 by 2, and we get 2/18. When we subtract our numerators only. 12 minus 2 is 10 over 18. Now in this case, this fraction can be reduced. 10 and 18 are both divisible by 2. So we'll divide them both by 2 and reduce this to lowest terms, which would give us 5/9. Anytime we're working with fractions, we always want our answer reduced to lowest terms. Okay, now let's try, let's see if I can move. Trying to remember how to move the screen a little bit. There we go. I'm going to scoot those over. All right. And do our next problem. Let's try some mixed numbers. So what if we have 7 and 5/7 minus 3 and 1/2? Okay. I stressed this the other day in class. I repeat, do not change these mixed numbers to improper fractions. We are going to get a common denominator for the fraction part of the number, and we're going to leave those whole numbers alone. So we're looking at 5/7 and 1/2. The common denominator for those would be 14. All right, so 7 we would have to multiply by 2 to get 14. So we'll multiply 5 by 2 and get 10. Now don't forget about the 7 over there. It's still there. We can't forget it's there, and we don't want to forget our 3 either. Here, for the 1/2, we're going to multiply by 7, and that'll give us 7/14. All right, so now we're going to subtract our fractions. 10/14 minus 7/14 is 3/14. Come back and subtract your whole numbers. 7 minus 3 is 4, so our final answer is 4 3/14. Okay, let's see. Scoot those up a little bit. Now, let's try this one. 6 minus 4 and 1/8. All right, here we do not have a fraction part in our menu end. And so we don't have anything to subtract the 1/8 from, and we cannot do that problem like that. So we need a fraction to subtract 1/8 from. So we're going to do some regrouping here. We're going to take 1 whole from the 6, so the 6 is going to become a 5. Now that 1 that we took from the 6 can be written in many ways. We can write the number 1 as any number over itself. In other words, 3 over 3, 4 over 4, 5 over 5. Any number over itself is equal to 1. In this case, because the denominator down here in the subtrahend is an 8, we would love to have a fraction that has a denominator of 8. So we're going to write the 1 that we borrowed from the 6 as 8/8. 8/8 is equivalent to 1 whole. So this still equals 6 up here. You've got 5 and 8/8. That's 5 plus 1, which is 6. But now we've put it in a form where we can subtract from it. 8/8 minus 1/8 is 7/8, and 5 minus 4 is 1, and that would be our answer for that one. Let's try another one like that. 4 minus 2 and 3/11. Okay, again, we don't have a fraction in our menu end to subtract 3/11 from. We need one, so we're going to regroup. We're going to take 1 whole away from the 4. That's going to make it a 3. Now that 1 whole that we took from the 4 is going to be rewritten in fraction form. We can write it as any number over itself. In this problem, it makes sense to use 11 because the subtrahend has a denominator of 11 and we need a common denominator. So we're going to take the 1 that we took from the 4 and we're going to write it as 11/11. Now we are able to subtract. 11/11 minus 3/11 is 8/11, and 3 minus 2 is 1. So our answer is 1 and 8/11. Okay, now let's try this one. 7 1/3 minus 2 3/5. Common denominator is our first step. When we get our common denominator, we get 15 would be the easiest thing to use. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and rewrite my fractions over 15. On the top, I'll have to multiply by 5 to get 15 on the bottom, so I'll have to multiply the top by 5 as well, and I have 5/15. Down on the bottom, I'm going to have to multiply that by 3 to get 15, so I'm going to have to multiply my numerator by 3 as well, and that's 9. Now, we have a problem because we cannot subtract 9/15 from 5/15. 9 is bigger than 5, and so we're going to have to regroup. Now, it's going to be similar to what we did a minute ago. We're going to take 1 away from our whole number. So our 7 is going to become a 6. The 1 that we took from our whole number can be written as any number over itself. Since our denominator is 15, it makes sense to write that 1 that we took away, I'm going to bring it over here, instead of 1, as 15/15. That's 1. All right, so now we're going to add that to the 5/15 we already had. So on top, we now have 6 for the whole number part and 20/15. Okay, we had 5/15. We regrouped a 1 from our whole number, and that 1 can be written as 15/15. We added 15/15 to 5/15 to get 20/15. All right, now our bottom number can just stay the same, 2 and 9/15. We just had to regroup our menu end so that we were able to subtract. All right, now 20/15 minus 9/15 is 11/15. And 6 minus 2 is 4. So our answer is 4 and 11/15. All right. one more just to make sure we've got it. Oops. 10 2/5 minus 4 7/8. All right, our common denominator looks like it's going to be 40. So I'll rewrite my fractions with denominators of 40 first. 8 would have to be multiplied by 5 to get 40, so we'll have to multiply the 7 by 5, and that's 35. 5 would have to get multiplied by 8, so we'll multiply the 2 by 8, and that's 16. We run into the same problem we had a minute ago. We cannot subtract 35 from 16. 35 is larger than 16. So in our menu end, we're going to have to do some regrouping. So we're going to borrow 1 or take 1 away from the 10 and make it a 9. Now that 1 whole that we took from the 10, we're going to rewrite it as, in this problem, 40 over 40. Now I picked 40 because that's the denominator we have, and a common denominator is important and necessary when we're adding fractions. All right, so now what do we have on top? Let's see. We have a 9 for our whole number part, and then we have 16/40 plus 40/40 is 56/40. On the bottom, we can just bring it over. We have 4 and 35/40. And we're subtracting. 56 minus 35 is 21 over 40. 9 minus 4 is 5. Now, we have not had very many instances where we had to reduce our answer, but if your answer will reduce, you should always reduce it to lowest terms. Okay, that wraps up subtraction, and the next video will be on multiplying fractions.